out there. Welcome to Behind the Pulpit for March the 10th, right? March 10th? March 10th,
March 9th.
March 9th?
Is when we're filming
Is it March
this.
9th? March 9th, 2026. We're so glad I just jumped into the future right there. My name is Bob Urbig. I'm one of your hosts here. I'm joined by the illustrious, right? Whatever the word is. Pastor Dave Henschel right here, looking great in his zip up. You just got that at a conference we went to, Pastor Dave. Tell us what's going on with those symbols.
I am showing off my alumni allegiance here to what used to be known as Philadelphia Biblical University when I was there, but it's now known as Cairn University. And this is the Cairn logo. And I think it's a Trinitarian symbol. I haven't verified that.
Yeah, Trinitarian symbol with a shield. The shield of... Yeah, all that.
Shield of faith or something? Yeah.
Maybe.
Shield of the college.
It's cool. I like... By the way, they stole the colors from Eastern University. Those were the colors of Eastern as well.
Is that right? Yeah, because
the maroon and the gray
and silver. Yeah,
yeah.
Because the thing that is the reverse of Eastern is when I was there, they were the Eagles.
Yes,
and but they were called the Crimson Eagles. But they are not the Crimson Eagles anymore. Though
they're
the
not?
Eastern is the Eagles.
Oh, Eastern is okay.
But PBU used to be the Crimson Eagles, and now they're the Highlanders. That's a big change.
Maybe Eastern had something to say about that.
When they became Cairn, they changed the mascot too. So,
well, very cool. There's a little bit of history.
Maybe there's too much confusion with the college down the road, Eagles.
Probably. They're both in Philadelphia area. Anyway, all right. Hey, we're glad that you're back with us. Sorry we took a few-week hiatus. We had some scheduling issues and things going on, but we're back, and we're going to be doing a recap of our disability series, as well as talking a little bit about Jason Thacker's Underground, his Psalm 8 message, all of that. So we got a lot to cover in the sermon recap portion. But before we get there, since we're a little rusty, we got to do the weekly warm-up. So Tim, tell us what's happening here in our weekly warm-up for the folks.
All right, welcome back everyone to Behind the Pulpit. We missed you guys. Hopefully you missed us too.
People were asking. There was clamor. When are you coming back?
People love the show. Everyone that watches, millions of people who watch the show.
It's going to be one of those shows that ages well. 30 years in the future, people will be finding us on YouTube.
The throwback episode. It's going to be like watching the Brady Bunch.
And then Dave and I will be in our 70s. We'll come on here and be remember that time when we talked about...
Throwback to this episode. All right. So for those of you who may have forgotten in our long time that we've been off, the weekly warm-up is when we take a verse that corresponds with the episode number. So it's 421, season 4, episode 21. Oof. And we ask the pastors as a warm-up to dissect and to interpret and to explain the message. So today, our weekly warm-up passage is from John chapter 4, verse 21, which says, Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me."
I like those nice cooling colors right there.
Thank you, Pastor Bob. Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father." John 4:21 in the English Standard Version. Pastor Bob, Pastor Dave, how should one interpret this passage?
Well, I'll start, but the conversation with the woman at the well is a fascinating conversation. Jesus didn't have to go through Sychar, Samaria, but he chose to do that because he has great compassion on those who are on the outside. He runs into this lady who's a Samaritan, and she starts talking about how they worship at a different place, and there's a lot of background there. So the background is the Israelite people were conquered by the Assyrian Empire. And when the Assyrians did that, they were very wise. And what they knew was that if they would conquer a people, they would disintegrate if they didn't have cohesion religiously to keep them together. So they would have them intermarry, and they would disperse the people amongst the other pagan peoples in the Assyrian Empire, and they would lose their sense of identity in that way. So those people were sort of half Jewish and then half something else. And then when they migrated back to the land around Sychar and the well, they were looked at suspiciously by the Jewish people who maintained their ethnicity. When they got conquered by Babylon, it was a different philosophy. They had a sense of, we're going to keep this group together, relocate you over here, What was it in Walk Through the Bible? Assyria.
I was just thinking about that.
Babylon. Back. So the Jewish people maintained
Israel
Creation,
scattered.
fall.
Scattered. Remember that? Scattered. So
Creation, fall, flood.
and so the Jewish people were more ethnically pure, which that's why we still have like the line of David still pure, because the Jewish people kept that, the line of Judah. And so that's what's going on there in terms of the animosity, and that's background. And then the other difference religiously between the Samaritans and the Jews was they had a different Bible. So the Samaritans, we know this from the Dead Sea Scrolls, they only believed in something called the Samaritan Pentateuch, which is close to the regular Jewish Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, but it has some differences. Most of the differences are insignificant, but it does relocate worship. And they believe that you didn't worship in Jerusalem. They believe you should worship on Mount Gerizim, which was, if you may remember, Moses brought all the people together in Deuteronomy, put them on one mountain, and the other mountain, Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal, and the curses were Mount Ebal and the blessings were Mount Gerizim. They thought you should worship on Mount Gerizim, and so that was a major difference, and the Jews and the Samaritans didn't get along with each other, like at all. I have a couple quotes here from my notes. This one's from the Wisdom of Ben Sirach, written in 200 BC. It says this: "There are 2 nations that my soul detests. The third is not a nation at all, the inhabitants of Mount Seir," that was Esau. "The second, the Philistines. Third, the stupid people living at Shechem." So that's the way the Jewish people were writing and talking about the Samaritans during the intertestamental period. And here's another one from the Mishnah, which is a collection of Jewish interpretations of Scripture from AD 200. This continued into the incoming centuries. It says this: "He that eats the bread of the Samaritans is like he who eats the flesh of swine." So the Jews hated the Samaritans and vice versa. It was mutual. And Jesus, with his grace and compassion, approaches one, and John the apostle dumps one right into the middle of his gospel to teach us a lesson about the kingdom of God being maybe broader and wider than we originally had thought. That was a lot. I probably talked too long on that. But.
Oh, it's you did take a majority of that, but I will say that's also why there's a lot of prohibitions in the Old Testament against intermarrying, because they knew once you married somebody, they wanted to get you off of worshiping God. This was the issue with Solomon and others throughout the Old Testament. But yeah, very good.
All right.
Are we warmed up, Tim?
I know, you tell me.
Is the blood flow? Is the blood flowing in your brain?
Well, let's finish the question. So the question is, like, what does this verse mean? So Jesus is saying there's going to be a time where you don't worship there, lady, and we don't worship over here either. And he's predicting something major, like a huge change. He's not going to have a local, Israelite kingdom. It's going to be busting the borders of that wide open. Kingdom. It's going to be international. It's going to be global. And the new location of the people of God is going to be this new temple called the body of Christ. And so we won't have just a geographical center that's just limited.
Spirit will come.
The Spirit's going to come.
The veil was torn in two when Jesus rose.
Right. In John 4, I have this little thing, and I haven't found anyone else who said this, but Jesus says, "A time is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship in spirit and truth," right? And my question is, where do the red letters stop? Like, so you know how John sometimes, like in John chapter 3, we're not sure where the red letters stop. My question is, was Jesus saying a time is coming when the true worshipers will worship, but it had not yet come? But then John, from his perspective, knowing Pentecost already happened, did he put a parenthetical statement there? And is it John who said, "and now is," or was that Jesus saying basically the time has come, the Messiah is here? I don't know anybody else who thinks that, so it's probably wrong. Usually when you're coming up with something new and original, it's probably because it's wrong. But that's just my little I have a thought about that, and I've never chased down anybody who has verified.
So it's in the
thought. Greek,
it's there.
Oh yeah.
But it's not in the ESV.
It's a different verse. It's not verse 21 where he says that.
Verse 23. "But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth." Meaning he's come to inaugurate the kingdom, right? At his first coming.
Yeah.
So you just don't know it yet.
Yeah. That's what most interpreters
Yeah.
say, and it's red there, right? Your whole thing's
Yes,
red.
the whole thing's
My
red.
question is the middle section parenthetical? Is the middle section supposed to be black? Is the middle section John saying, Jesus said a time is coming, and I'm John looking back from it, and I'm writing this, and I'm saying, and is now here, guys. It happened. Or is that just Jesus predicting it's here because he's inaugurating the kingdom in his person? So that's my little pet heresy.
I don't know if it's a heresy. I could see Jesus saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
One of the questions we'll ask when we get to heaven.
yes.
Yep. All right. Well, very good. John chapter 4, verse 21. We'll await what's coming next week. There'll be a
422.
422.
Oh, we're going right in order through the whole Bible?
Well, and he's saying that it's
So,
it'd be
so what I do?
some 422.
So some out of some
it's
book of
the
Bible.
date?
No, it's the
That's
episode. title.
So
We'd have
season
to-
4, episode 21.
We have done the date.
Season 4, episode 22. So he'll have to pick a different chapter.
We've done
4.
the date, but the problem is sometimes the episode doesn't come out on the date that we record it, so it's a little confusing.
Yeah.
So next season, it'll be chapter 5s that we are targeting. But for right now, we are targeting chapter 4.
A systematic takedown of all the chapter 4s
after
in the
a few
Bible.
years, there will be some books of the Bible that can no longer be used in this segment. So
When we get to season 150,
Well, we're
there's
already
only
done-
one book left.
We're
the
already
Psalms.
done with Jude and 3rd John, right? And they can't be asked.
I cannot. sorry, Jude.
Sorry, Jude.
And John for like part of your stuff. And now a very important message from the most honorable, the most learned, and unquestionably the most sharp-witted guardian of the law, Her Honor, Judge Millie Ninchtonian.
Well, hello, churchgoers. How lovely to see you outside of a Sunday morning. Might I remind you of the upcoming highlight event of the season? Wednesday, March 18th, 7 p.m., there will be our annual church business meeting. Please, I don't want to be forced to be melancholy. Please be there. You must. See you there. Ta-ta.
Now let's launch into our world famous segment. There's been a lot that's been happening in the last few weeks.
Wonder what we're going to talk about.
in the news. So, Pastor Dave, what caught your eye in the last few weeks? Was there anything interesting that happened in the news?
I was a little surprised a week ago Saturday morning to learn that we had launched some attacks in Iran. That was certainly a major news story, and I think it's been the top headline of every single newspaper and news channel for the last 10 days or so.
So as that has happened, we've been hearing that Iran's navy is at the bottom of the sea. The Ayatollah is no more, and the assaults continue. 7 U.S. service members have been killed in action, which is tragic, and lots more stuff has happened. Iran was launching attacks on other nations, and then apparently they stopped and apologized. Whoops, I guess. Some people were speculating they were doing that to get them to get the U.S. to stop, but we're not geopolitical experts here. I know there's a lot that's gone on with the history of Iran over the last 50 years in terms of our relationship with them, and I wasn't alive in 1979, but you were, and I'm sure you remember when you were in diapers about the hostages and all that. Then the Shah got kicked out, and
I'm sure it was on the news. I was a little small to be paying attention to that stuff back then, but my family has told me about the days in Iran before the takeover, and it was a very different place back then. Very modern type of economy,
right?
Very different.
So there's been speculation
culture.
that Iran, over the years, has always tried to go after the U.S. They call the U.S. the Great Satan. Things like attacks on the USS Cole and even the war in Iraq, them meddling around with things, and of course having an antagonistic stance toward the nation of Israel. So there's a lot to be said about that. We're going to link in the show notes a podcast from the Colson Center for Christian Worldview. John Stonestreet interviewed a military expert on the idea of just war, and he had a lot of really good things to say. So we're going to let them speak to that. But we thought that what we could do today about this news story was talk with you a little bit about what are the historical parameters of a just war. I had a few folks ask about that. And then there's some theological pieces to this as it relates to Islam and Christianity and eschatology that we wanted to dialogue a bit about. So let's start with the just war categories. So the whole idea behind just war, and I'm forgetting who was the original scholar that put it out there. Do you remember who the original person was?
So there's two major Christian theologians in the history of the church in the last 2,000 years that have thought very deeply about just war theory. The first one was Augustine, and then 700 years after that, Thomas Aquinas also has different writings on just war. There's a lot of overlap with what they teach, but those are the two main sources. One of them kind of from the Church Fathers era, and then one of them who's a medieval theologian, the doctor of the church, Summa Theologica. So both of those people are sort of well known for their just war writings.
Right. So there was 7 categories that they came up with that have been synthesized over the years that are criterion for a just war. And the first one is if the war has a just cause. A just cause, meaning that there's a legitimate reason for you to go in, not just something you made up because you didn't like them, but there was something that was just, that was required there. Number 2, that you go in with the right intention. So again, just going in, toppling a regime because you don't like them would be considered probably not an actual right motivation. Number 3 is that there's a legitimate authority, and in this case, correct me if I'm wrong, this is that you have the legitimate authority to go in and do what you're doing, right? That there's not just anybody can launch a war.
Correct, yeah. And so the framers of our particular republic put in certain powers to the executive branch and then certain powers to the legislative branch, and those were divided purposely to put some checks and balances into who makes that decision.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of debate in this particular case because there was something called the War Powers Act of, what was the date? 1973 that gave the president, the chief executive commander-in-chief, latitude to go and make attacks. And I think that was initially put in place because warfare is different now than it was back in, say, World War II, which was the last time that Congress, I think, officially declared war.
Which basically says if the president were to take action militarily, he has 48 hours to notify Congress, and then he can continue to make executive decisions for 60 days without needing Congress to declare war formally. So we're outside of that framework right now, so it's only been 10 days. So
we have another 50 before Congress has to declare.
It becomes a problem legally, right?
Right.
Then there's some definitions of what is a war exactly, and is it different from a surgical strike? Does it mean boots on the ground? Does it? Depending upon how you define it, then you're going to have to decide whether or not the right protocols were followed.
And that'll probably only get more complicated in the future as we have more robotic drone type things that happen. So anyway, so you need a legitimate authority to declare war. Number 4 is that you go in as the last resort, that you've exhausted all other options before you actually engage in a military strike. Number 5 is that you have assessed the probability of success, that you going in and actually engaging in this act of warfare is going to make a difference after you're done. Number 6 is proportionality, that you're responding in proportionality to the way that you've been attacked. So if somebody, I guess, sinks a ship and then you send several nuclear bombs on the country, would be out of proportion. And then last would be discrimination. Are you engaging in the right discrimination of the people that you're attacking? How would you? More needs to be said about that. How would you categorize the discrimination piece?
So the phrase, I think, is non-combatant immunity. And so if you are at war with a certain people group or a country, then you would want to be careful to protect innocent civilians from getting embroiled into the conflict who are not part of the other country's army.
Yeah. So those are the 7 categories for in the just war theory. It's obviously a complicated thing. Again, like we said, we're not geopolitical experts, but I would encourage you to go listen to that podcast. The guy on there does kind of walk through these ideas, as well as offering some challenges for if some of this needs to be rethought in the case of how modern warfare is waged. But where we can dialogue here is on the theological end, and there's some interesting eschatological end times themes that are at play here. And so why don't we start with Islam?
So to understand what's going on theologically with Islam, Bob and I just got a question this morning. Is there such a thing as an Islamic seminary? And of course there is. There's a major one in Texas here, and there's a few others in the United States as well as across the world. If you understand the theology of what's going on in a certain branch of Islam, then it would help you understand what's going on, at least in some segments. So when the Prophet Muhammad passed away, there was great debate as to who was the legitimate successor to Muhammad to continue in the religion of Islam. Some people thought that it had to be a relative of Muhammad, and that particular school of thinking became the Shia branch of Islam, and that's a much smaller segment of Islam. The majority of the Islamic nations are Sunni Muslims, and so that is less particular with regards to who can be the next leader of Islam. So there was a guy named Ali who was Muhammad's cousin, and he was the first one to take over after Muhammad. Ali was then assassinated. Things got kind of complicated.
Abu Bakr? He's later on. I took a Middle Eastern history class, and I always remember Abu Bakr.
I don't remember when he came along. Then the Sunnis thought it was okay to choose the next Muslim leader from the Muslim community. So that was what happened there. So when you're thinking about Iran, and particularly the Ayatollah, the leadership there, you're talking about Shia. So Shiite Muslims have a very specific kind of theology and a very specific kind of eschatology, and that means last things. So what happens at the end of the world? So we have our own eschatology, and Christians believe certain things. Now we disagree on some details, but we generally think about certain things.
Should we mention Nero?
Yeah. We have a great debate on Nero's place in there. So why don't you maybe share what's the basic tenets of Christian eschatology that anybody can agree with? Like what's the things we can all say? We're all on the same page about this.
Everybody be on the same page about the fact that Jesus, of course, will come back. He's gonna be coming back
physically,
bodily. Yes. Everybody agrees that there's going to be some type of tribulation. They just don't put that in maybe the same order, and how that looks is different. Everybody agrees there will be a last judgment of the living and the dead. There's going to be a new heavens and a new earth. There's going to be some kind of rise of Antichrist. Now, how that plays out and when that happens and who that is, there's debate about that. What am I forgetting? Those are some of the main tenets.
Yeah. So we have great hope, coming future kingdom. So in Islam, so the eschatology is that they believe that there is a person called the 12th Imam. The Imam is like the leader of Islam. So the 12th Imam descended from Ali, that would be the bloodline of Muhammad. And he kind of went into hiding. He disappeared, but he didn't die. That's their understanding. And they think that he will reappear, the 12th Imam, at the end of history, and he will establish justice and defeat all evil in the world. This will also be accompanied by something called the return of the Mahdi. That's another figure, kind of a messianic figure in Islam, who will bring justice and final judgment at the end. And believe it or not, someone will come to assist the figure named Mahdi, and you'll never believe who it is. They think Jesus.
He's gonna bring the assist, right?
Yeah,
he's gonna give him the alley-oop, right?
Yes, they call him Isa. They think Jesus is not the the God who became man. They don't confess that Jesus is the proper Jewish Messiah, the King of the world. They don't profess the same Jesus that we profess. But they think Jesus was a great prophet, and they think this Jesus is going to come and return and assist the Mahdi in defeating all of these evil forces. And then there will be a period of great global justice, and true Islam will come. Then they will have the final resurrection and then the judgment. So there's a lot more to it, but that's the kind of eschatology that they're looking to. And so some people in that part of the world are expecting a great cataclysm at the end, and there might even be some thinking that we can spur this along. And so we're kind of bringing in the end of days. And so there's a certain eschatology there that would be in your thinking when you're coming to, let's say, a geopolitical negotiating table, and they're asking you to give up things like nuclear weapons and to give up certain things that you think are very important. And you would be more resistant if that's your ideology. That's going to drive some of your politics as well. So that's maybe a little bit of theology behind the scenes that people maybe need to be aware of as they're watching kind of the headlines and what's going on in the news geopolitically as well. So
now, of course, on the Christian side, there's different thoughts about how Israel factors into this, and how this is part of the preparation for the end times, and Israel in this great attack. And you have Russia now, I hear, is assisting Iran, the great bear of the north, right? So there's different commentary on that from the Christian perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from the classical dispensationalist perspective, the nation of Israel geopolitically would play a very large role in the end times events. So a lot of classical dispensationalists will see 1948 and the reformation of Israel with its current setup as a fulfillment of the prophecy that God will regather his people to the land again. And then there are certain passages in the New Testament, such as in the Thessalonian letters, where it appears that at the end there's going to be another Jewish temple, and then there's going to be an Antichrist figure that comes and demands worship inside of that temple. And so someone from a dispensationalist perspective might be thinking there could be a third temple that's going to be built there at the Temple Mount, where right now the Islamic mosque is there. But that's a very different way of thinking of what's going to happen at the end. And then other Christian theologians would say, well, if you're Jewish, then you would come into the kingdom of Jesus the same exact way a Gentile would come into the kingdom of Jesus, by grace through faith. And there's not a very specific, narrow promise for the geopolitical Israel in the future, but rather they come into the church just as anyone else would come into the church by placing their faith in Jesus, the Jewish Messiah. And there wouldn't be things like a literal fulfillment of a third temple and a literal fulfillment of the land promises again. So there's different ways Christians think about what's going on and what's going to come in the future as well. Some of that comes into play into people's thinking as well. So there's different views on that. We went through a lot of those. Nero in spades a couple of years ago. If you want to go back and
watch
review
our the Unveiling of Jesus Christ series, you can go back and watch that.
Right.
All right. So that obviously is happening in the news. Keep an eye on it. I would say pray for the president. Pray for our military. Pray for the Christians in Iran. Pray that God would do a work even in the midst of this, and we trust His sovereignty and providence even when things are difficult. Thus ends in the news.
Ladies, we want to make sure you know about a very special weekend coming up this spring. The NBC Women's Retreat will take place on April 17th through the 19th in Birmingham, Pennsylvania, in the heart of Lancaster County. The retreat will be held at Amish View Inn & Suites, a beautiful hotel surrounded by Amish farmland. It's a peaceful setting where you can step away from the busyness of everyday life and spend intentional time seeking the Lord. The theme for this weekend is In His Presence, drawn from 1 Chronicles 16:11, which says, "Seek the Lord and His strength, seek His presence continually." Throughout the weekend, women will grow together in their understanding of prayer and deepen their walk with the Lord. This retreat speaker will be Gail Lohr, a faithful teacher who has led Bible studies for many years here at NBC, and she continues to disciple young women through the church's Circle of Sisters ministry. This weekend will also include fellowship, great meals, and an optional trip to see the Joshua Show at Sight and Sound Theater, along with many other activities in the area. If you're planning to attend, registration is open now through the Women's Ministry page on the church website. The retreat is already filling up quickly, so make sure to sign up soon. afternoon. Don't miss this opportunity for a weekend of rest, fellowship, and growing together in the Lord, in His presence.
And now let's move on. Speaking of war, let's move on to our next segment, the Great Book War.
And you guys can be the judge as to whether or not this war is just as well.
I feel like there was some unproportionality over the years here.
Yes, I still think there are claims of.
By the way, I was
unfair
listening to
ally
Breakpoint
payment.
Saturday, and they had a fight about books.
They did?
Did you listen to
John
Saturday?
and Maria? No.
Yeah, so Maria was sneaking in book recommendations through the show, and John got irritated.
See, everyone listens to
He's like,
Behind the Pulpit.
this is what you do. You keep on, you have like so mane books inside the show.
Yeah, Stone Street listens, and
He listens to our...
He's like, hey, this is a good idea. Let's throw it in Breakpoint. So John, thank you.
He got
you.
He got some segment
sure.
ideas from Behind the Pulpit for Breakpoint.
Yes. Yeah, he's a big fan, actually.
We are an affiliate. We're an affiliate member.
Yeah, he's very excited for us to come to the conference.
All I know is we're living in a moment.
And
A civilizational moment.
and the current book war moment that we are in is Pastor Dave with his 6-9 lead over Pastor
right.
Bob. And it was a very long time ago that we had the last voting. So I'll remind you of the books that were voted upon. Pastor Bob's book
what did we recommend 3 weeks ago? I
was
forget.
about eating amphibians. Eat That Frog.
Oh, Eat the Frog.
The
That's
fourth
right.
edition, 21 Great Ways to Stop Procrastination. Pastor Dave's book was Getting the Message, a Plan for Interpreting and Applying the Bible by Dr. Daniel M. Doriani. And that was the book, surprise, surprise, that did win. Getting the Message by Doriani was your winner. With a lot of votes this time around. 14 responses, so thank you for voting. Keep it up. Pastor Dave receiving 64.3% of the vote.
Well, it's very clear that those that are voting are not getting things done. They're just sitting here voting.
You know, it's
Our
funny.
books.
Yeah, Pastor Bob, you were onto something because this
Keep insulting your viewers, Bob.
was
that's a good strategy.
It's the David Letterman strategy.
This was one of the longest times in between a vote reveal, and this had the most votes. So people are indeed procrastinating on their
they
voting.
are. See, that's what I said. You got to eat the frog. This got to be your frog that you eat this week.
Is voting on time. So here's the score: 6-10. Not out of reach. We have plenty of episodes remaining.
We're a grand slam away, Tim.
We are a grand slam.
So this being a different ball
So
game.
could this be the run? Pastor Bob's got to go on a heater here, so we're going to let him start right now by recommending a book.
Well, I will say the book I'm going to recommend. We had given away the physical copies of this book. So for those that hate the digital recommendation, I'm sorry. I don't have the physical copy because they were given away because they're so popular. But our speaker this last weekend, Jason Thacker, has written a number of books. One of the first books he wrote was called The Age of AI. The Age of AI. Wonderful book, kind of ahead of its time. And I think he was mentioning he's going to be working on an updated edition, but this is still worth thinking through. I was sitting in our Birds and the Bees class yesterday, and there was a lot of talk about AI and how do we teach our kids how to use this and ChatGPT and all these other crazy things. This book will equip you on how to think that through and give you some practical steps. He does have a follow-up book called Following Jesus in a Digital Age, but I'm recommending this one today. Start here, Jason Thacker. For those of you that liked him this weekend, there it is.
It's one of the best covers that we've had on
It
the
is.
show.
It is quite a beautiful cover. I like the yellow. It just pops.
But what does the mask behind it mean? What is that like?
Well, that's like it's
Jason
like
from Friday the 13th.
No,
there?
it's like it's code. It's the the computer code, like the Matrix.
It's the hacker.
And it's a face.
I feel
you
like
know,
it's a
or
hockey mask, and
like
I'm
the AI.
scared.
Look, I'm moving it. Look, there he is.
It's not meant to be creepy.
Maybe you should be
I
scared.
think it is
Pastor Dave,
intentionally
'cause
meant to
this
be
book is
creepy.
coming for you this week.
It is.
Okay.
All right. What do you got over there?
He's not worried.
This is a rerun. So
a rerun.
Yeah, but I think Bob recommended this a while ago. But in light of the fact that
I
we're
do
just
have that
talking
book.
about, I feel like you recommended this. I could be wrong. In light of the fact that we're talking about what's going on in the Middle East and the theological underpinnings of certain branches of Islam, I think you should pick up James White's book, What Every Christian Needs to Know About the Quran. The Quran is hard to read. There's not an orderly nature to it. There's some surahs that Muhammad wrote when he was younger, and then other surahs that he wrote when he was older, and they don't necessarily go in order, and some of them like contradict each other. And so if you are trying to work your way through the Quran, which I have done, it's hard. And so that book helped me kind of get the basic gist of what I need to be concerned about in here, and help me make a few key markings of what the Quran says and how Christians disagree with what the Quran says regarding their authority using the scriptures. So James White, what every Christian needs to know about the Quran. He also has a couple cool videos about this on YouTube, and he does things like, he doesn't call them interfaith dialogues, but he has discussions with Muslim scholars, and it's helpful to know what are the distinctions. And I think he does a really good job graciously walking through the differences and just being honest about what the differences are. Mm-hmm. So James White, check it out. I think you'll enjoy that.
Next day delivery on Amazon too.
That's true.
Wow.
So I picked that book up after we went to we did a mission trip with Amun Sharon, one of our world partners, down in Piscataway. There's a huge mosque here in New Jersey, and we went and visited and then talked with the imam down there. And I went and picked that up because they gave us a Quran. Yeah. By the way, this month in our Colson Fellows program, we're reading Nabil Qureshi's book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus.
That's another good one.
I'm almost done.
So I will. Yeah, it's a great book, right? Did you get to the end?
No, I'm about 3/4 of the way through.
I won't spoil it for you because the end is pretty amazing. But I won't recommend that because I'm sure I have done that before. But that's a great follow-up book after this one to learn how to talk to Muslims.
So what's cool about this, one more thing, is there's a glossary in the back. So sometimes you hear words and you're like, what is that? Like Tawheed. What's Tawheed? And, I just threw out some words for you, Sunni or Shia, or, things like the Hadith. Those are the writings of Muhammad, which, by the way, that has a lot of that eschatology I was talking about. So if you need like a dictionary to understand Islam, it has a glossary in the back, which is helpful too. So.
Have you read the Hadith?
Bits and pieces.
Okay. Not like the Quran, though.
No.
All right. Quran, the Quran. Mm-hmm. By the way, you shouldn't have another book on top of the Quran. You're being very bad right now.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. They consider that quite holy, right?
You can't have a book on top.
I don't think you can put it on the ground. I think it has to always be on the top.
And you have, only with your right hand, right?
Ooh, that's right.
I was listening to Nabil. I believe that was a left-handed pickup from Pastor Dave there.
You made a bunch of faux pas,
a bunch of people.
You did. Nobody's listening to you anymore.
I try to be sensitive. Not that I think that the Quran is, anything authoritative, but I don't want to unnecessarily turn people off when I'm trying to be persuasive. So I remember having coffee one time with a brother who was Muslim, and the manner in which I was speaking about Muhammad was jarring to him. And so I've learned to sort of temper my comments just to be not necessarily honoring toward Muhammad, but just respectful of other people. So,
well, as big as this show is, it's actually not that popular in the Muslim community. We're not very big there.
Well, let's not.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
We've gotten some comments that make me wonder. So we'll see.
We're getting there.
All right, so we'll put an end to truce to the book war, a ceasefire, as it were, at the moment, and we'll come back and see what happens next week.
As we approach the most meaningful week in the Christian calendar, we want to invite you to celebrate Holy Week with us here at NBC. We have a full weekend plan, and we would love for you and your family to be a part of it. Things begin on Saturday, March 28th with our hair-raising egg party. That'll take place from 10 a.m. to 12 noon with a VIP hour for families with special needs at 9:30. It's always a great morning for families, kids, and friends to come together and celebrate the joy of the season. Then we move into Holy Week itself. On Monday, Thursday at 7 p.m., we'll gather for a special service remembering the Last Supper, featuring a dramatic presentation focused on the events of the upper room. The next evening, Good Friday at 7 p.m., we'll reflect together on the 7 last words of Jesus Christ, remembering the sacrifice that stands at the center of our faith. And then comes Easter Sunday, the celebration of the resurrection. This year, we'll be having 3 services at 8 o'clock, 9:30, and 11 a.m. as we gather to worship and celebrate the risen Christ together. So mark your calendars now for our egg party on March 28th, Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday at 7 p.m., and Easter Sunday at 8, 9:30, or 11 a.m. Come celebrate Holy Week with us here at NBC as we remember the cross and rejoice in the resurrection.
Now let's move on to our audience questions. We have 2 rather lengthy ones today, and I'll let you introduce the first one, Tim, and then I'll kick off the second one.
The King of Questions has spoken.
King, that seems like a shirt we must get.
The King of Questions.
By the way, before you put this in here, so since we took a break, John did come and give me a book. He gave me the Same Lake, Different Same lake, different boat. Is that the right? That's the right category. By Stephanie Hubach for the disability series. But then he also brought me a package of Kit Kats because he was told those are my favorite, and they're gone, so I can't show. We waited too long. I was going to bring them on Monday.
Fill the mailbox.
Although I need to cut out all the sugar, so maybe give me the sugarless ones in the future.
I don't know if those exist.
Continue. Sorry.
I'll get.
But thank you, John. I appreciate that.
All right, from John. How does one know that they are using their spiritual gifts so that God will be praised? How are spiritual gifts connected to spiritual fruit? In Galatians 5:22 through 23, it lists the fruits of the fruit of the Spirit. In 1 Peter 4:10, it says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in various forms. And in Matthew 7:20, it says, thus by their fruit you will recognize them. Then in verse 22 to 23, Jesus says, man, will you say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers.
You know, Bob and I were at Cairn University last Thursday, and we listened to 3 conference talks by Jared Wilson. He did a book called Lest We Drift and kind of highlighted some things from that book. And he talked about the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5, and I thought it was an interesting take, and I never really heard it said like this, but he said in Galatians 5, there's a list of the acts of the flesh, and those are all deeds, things you do. And then the fruit of the Spirit are not a deeds list. It is a list of character traits, like who you are and things that come from the heart. I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And what he did was he was contrasting like the law gospel thing. So life under the law, under compulsion, produces these acts of the flesh that are harmful. And then life rooted in the gospel and, you know, driven by the Spirit inside is very different, and it produces a different kind of fruit as well. So I'll just mention that from the conference. But why don't you?
Well, let me just tag on to that. I thought that was a wonderful observation as well. But it struck me a number of years ago that the great Tim Keller, in one of his talks on the fruit of the Spirit, he made the point of saying that it's the fruit of the Spirit, not the fruits of the Spirit. And, you know, I think many people get this idea that, oh, well, I have patience, I got love, but I really struggle with wisdom or whatever else it is. And he said, no, it's all of those things are character traits we should be developing in our life. And if you're a Christian who's indwelt by the power of the Spirit, these are character traits that we'll be developing in your life. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it.
What does it mean if I lose my fruit of the Spirit when someone says fruits of the Spirit? Does that mean I don't have, when I get annoyed with them for saying fruits, does that mean I don't have?
No, I think you're still battling the flesh in your sanctification, but you still have the ability to cultivate that by the power of the Spirit. That's why you're
trying.
Killing your flesh, or what is it? Thomas Owen or Thomas Owen?
John Owen.
John Owen. Be killing sin, or it'll be killing you, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And you gotta mortify your flesh and let
when
walk
people
with
say
the Spirit,
fruits of the Spirit, I get a little twitch. Also, when they say Revelations.
Psalms.
No, it's Revelation. Revelation.
You know the fruit of the Spirit song?
The songs of Solomon, the Song of Solomon.
I don't remember the fruit of the Spirit song.
It's like the fruit of the Spirit's not a coconut, and then they say them. I did a youth group talk on the fruit of the Spirit recently, and I said the fruit of the Spirit is actually like a pomegranate because it is one fruit that is filled with many different things that make up one fruit.
It's true, right? Oh. I mean, how can you say I don't want this, but I want that? You need all of them, right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control.
Back to the question. So the gifts of the Spirit are functional. They enable you to do ministry, teaching, leadership, evangelism, administration, prophecy. Those are very outward. The fruit of the Spirit are very inward. They are postures. They are things that are coming up from the inside, and we can manifest the character of Christ when we have them. And spiritual gifts were all over the church at Corinth. Everybody had wonderful gifts being put on display, and they had like a lot of fruit issues. So I think there's a common problem where people measure spiritual maturity based on gifts, not fruit. And they see
That's preach.
How could you
preach?
How could you complain? That person's so gifted. I mean, look at the way that they are using their powerful gifts, but those are not measurements of spiritual sanctification.
Character. Yeah.
They're given as gifts by God, but the fruit is very different. And so Jesus says, by their fruit you will recognize them. He doesn't say by their gifts you'll recognize them.
Yeah.
And so be very careful about that. The illustration I gave when I taught on 1 Corinthians 12 when you were on sabbatical was like Top Gun. So, yes, Top Gun. Here's my Top Gun illustration.
Wait for that or so. Did you come out dressed like Tom Cruise?
I should have.
Your bomber jacket and your aviators.
Yeah. So, I mean, I saw Top Gun when I was a kid, and who doesn't like Top Gun? If you're a young boy, you got these F-18s going really fast. I feel the need for speed, and it's great for a young, immature, adolescent boy that wants to see fast things and things blow up, and there's a lot of activity. It's energetic, but it has nothing to do with maturity. Whereas, so I'm having this conversation with Michelle Clemmy, who loves Top Gun. Hey, Michelle, if you're watching, you remember this conversation? So
is Michelle a frequent viewer? We'll find out. We'll find out if we got a comment.
Who isn't?
Yeah. So I'm talking to Michelle.
Or who shouldn't be.
This is right when Maverick was coming out.
Yes.
So I was talking to Michelle about like Top Gun things. She loves Top Gun. Can't wait to Top Gun. And I'm like, well, what do you love about it? She goes, well, the love story. And I'm like,
Kelly McGill.
Shoot, man. What was the love story?
There was a love story in there.
I really had to think about that part of the plot. And so my thought there was, okay, a very immature young Dave was interested in the sounds and the blasts and the rockets and all that. And I was not paying attention to the more mature plot line that was going through the movie of, a love relationship. And so my illustration about that is like Top Gun. So the gifts of the Spirit are Top Gun adolescent boy stuff. This is, flashy. It's, very obvious. And then the fruit of the Spirit is that hidden, mature, deep relational stuff that's going on that you need a little maturity before you can even recognize that plot line. So that's my illustration for the gifts versus the fruit.
Yeah, it's very good.
Great balls of fire.
Yeah.
It's interesting also when we went through the First Timothy series, when you come to the requirements for elders, all those requirements are character traits. Not. I mean, some. They have the ability to teach and all that, but the main character traits are main qualifications are character traits that the Spirit does in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very different from who do I want to hire as a quarterback on the Cowboys. Right. I don't really care about your maturity. I want to know if you can do the job. Right. But when it comes to being an elder,
but ideally you have both, right?
That would be nice.
You got gifts and fruit.
Yeah. But when it comes to being an elder, if you're going to have one or the other, you're going to choose the maturity.
You need a fruity gift, right?
Yeah. That's a good question, John.
It's a great question. Thanks, John, for keeping us on our toes. Appreciate that.
Question 2.
So bring me some fruit, not a Kit Kat.
Fruit's also got sugar.
It's natural sugar, which is different than refined sugar.
It is different.
There you go. All right. What's the next question here, Tim? This is another good one.
All right. This is from an anonymous or just didn't choose to put their name. Having Jason Thacker here was wonderful. Thank you.
That is 4 exclamation points. That's what we're talking about.
That's how wonderful it was.
By the way, did you happen to notice how tall Jason Thacker was? I was not expecting the height. He was like 6'5". He was huge.
He's a tall guy.
He is. And you missed it, Tim.
I did miss it. So. I have a question. Although only 1.7% of babies are born with intersex, both male and female organs, Jason gave us such a great answer, trans people, that we didn't need the burden of choosing our sex. God created us male or female. But how do we deal with this very small percentage of births where parents have to make a choice early on in their lives?
So there's a statistic being given here in the question that I think I'd like to just ask some questions about, like, what number do you mean there? So I looked it up, and there's different ways to measure whether or not someone is intersex. So yes, if someone is born with very obvious anatomical, clearly ambiguous genitalia, that's going to be a much lower percentage than 1.7% of the population. That's going to be, here's the number, 0.018% actually have that type of issue, where parents would have to make a decision early on about which direction they're going to go for their child. And usually that's what they do. But there are other less obvious examples of intersex that are going on hormonally that would bring that percentage up, as you're saying. So, I think we would think about this in terms of where are we in the story: creation, fall, redemption, consummation. In a fallen world, we have a lot of different kinds of issues that can happen physically. We've been doing this whole series on disability, and these kinds of things occur. And so we would see that as being part of a broken world that's soon going to be redeemed and made new. Remember, we're going to shake off the dust.
We'll talk about that in a second, right?
Something else. Yeah. There's 3 things we got to do. Shake off the dust was one of them.
Savor the seed, shake off the dust, and listen for the trumpet.
Yeah. Do the hokey pokey, and you turn yourself about. So, all seriousness, that's something that I think parents in consultation with their physician would need to decide. And usually that child is leaning in one direction or the other, and they're going to make a decision based on that. But it's a very difficult decision. And then they would still treat the genders as if they're binary, but you're going to be treating that child as one having a disability who's going to need treatment to fully flourish in their gender. Yeah.
Well, I think it's also important to make the distinction that the intersex conversation, as you mentioned, is there's a physical issue that's manifesting itself, which is categorically different than something like gender dysphoria or transgender identity, where it's a feeling that's inside of you. So this is something that's different than that. And
okay, so that's the bait and switch, though.
Okay.
Right? So people say, well, there is such a thing as this biological phenomenon that occurs. Therefore, it must be okay for someone just to mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically just identify with the other gender, and then and we would say, hold on, I think you just made a category error there, and you're doing a bait and switch, and we're acknowledging, as a result of the fall, these certain things do occur as genetic anomalies. We're not going to go so far as to say mental, emotional, psychological feelings of being a different gender than you are give you a legitimate reason to reject the God-given gender that you've been identified with at birth, recognized, that was recognized at your birth.
Yeah. Although we would say, and we did cover this in the series on the Upside Down Glory, was that the fall didn't just corrupt the soul, but it also corrupted nature itself. So Dave did a message on creation groaning, which I don't know if we got to talk about, but maybe we can today. So things like genetic anomalies and developmental disorders, these variations, these physical issues are all part of this. The theological term is noetic and biological effects of the fall of a disordered creation that one day Jesus is going to come back and make right and bring healing to the world. So this would fall under that category. Now, the question about how do we minister to them, I think one of the things that we emphasized in our series, and Jason Thacker did as well in the Underground Sessions, was to lead with the imago Dei, the image of God, that you have value because of who you are, not because of what you do. Every person is born with the image of God in them. I think there's another sense of distinguishing between the biological reality and an ideological agenda, which is what you were getting at right there. There is an agenda out there, just to be frank, about pushing people in a certain direction, because identity, finding your identity in your feelings or who you are or what the world says you should be, and it's even influencing medical establishments and educational institutions and politics and all that. We have to be careful of that. And I think just in terms of ministering to people, it's always wise to walk with them in their groaning. That's, again, the Romans 8 passage we talked about, that, again, we'll say more about. Resist making this a culture war issue when you're talking with people individually, because they are people that are impacted by this. We have to hear their story. Folks that are impacted by this, you talk with one person, you've talked with one person. And so it's important to hear them, to walk with them, and ultimately to point them to the truth of Scripture, the Christian worldview, biblical worldview, and ultimately, first and foremost, the Savior who can change and transform their lives and ultimately guarantees hope in the future. So,
I don't know if you saw about a month ago, there was a major lawsuit, and the detransitioner won $2 million in a malpractice lawsuit
it's gonna be
in New York. It was kind of a landmark decision.
It's going to be more of that,
the
I
first
think.
of its kind.
Yeah.
After someone was a detransitioner, sued their psychologist and surgeon for their medical malpractice regarding a double mastectomy that she received when she was 16. The court sided with her, and they held the doctors accountable for pressuring her into what is an irreversible surgery at such a young age. The book by Abigail Schreier's Irreversible Damage.
Yes.
And
that's sneaking in another book. Another book snuck in.
Yeah.
There's also her book, Bad Therapy, too. See, I countered you right there.
Her mother also told the daughter that was putting pressure there as well, and the issue was, would you rather have a living son or a dead daughter? They were saying this is going to become a suicidal issue, and I think that kind of pushiness might be on its way out. And in fact, after that case, I don't know if you saw this other article came out in the Atlantic, of all places. The title of the article was "The Tide Goes Out on Youth Gender Medicine," and it was about how America's doctors are no longer united on the wisdom of medicalizing gender dysphoria in minors. And you have to have a subscription behind a paywall to read this article. But it was a very interesting take on things might be changing in the culture around this issue now, that we're starting to see cases where they're holding doctors accountable for this kind of behavior. And then finances get involved, insurance gets involved, and that's going to become less and less common, a doctor willing to do this if they know that there could be potential legal and financial consequences.
And I remember hearing people say this a while ago, that as soon as suing and money gets involved, that's when things will actually change.
It's sad that it has to be that way, but I guess it has to be that way.
Yeah. Sigh. All right. Well, thank you. Great question, but both great questions. That's what we want more of. Give us more questions so we can dialogue about those. We appreciate that.
Hey guys, even though March is well underway, it's already time to start thinking about our April City Relief outreach. On April the 25th, we'll be heading back into New York City to partner with our friends at City Relief to serve our friends who are experiencing homelessness. It's always a powerful day of ministry as we go out and provide practical help, encouragement, and prayer to people who are going through difficult circumstances. Right now, we're looking for volunteers who would like to come out and be a part of outreach. Whether you've served before or this would be your first time joining us, we'd love to have you come along. If you're interested, head over to our church website, visit our City Relief page, and there you'll find all the information you need about our outreach partnership and the link to sign up specifically for the April 25th outreach in New York City. We hope you'll consider joining us as we step outside our walls and serve our neighbors in the city.
All right, why don't we do a little sermon review here? Now, we were talking before, since we've been out for, I think maybe 3 weeks, so I don't think we talked about your Romans 8 sermon, and then we had Corey Miller, who kind of got into some cultural issues that tie in with this. We had the finale of the Upside Down Glory, the 1 Corinthians 15 message on the future, and then Jason Thacker talked yesterday about Psalm 8 and human dignity. So maybe we can kind of just do a popcorn thing of what really stuck out, what questions we want to talk about, and then general reflections on the Upside Down Glory series. Because this coming week, we're starting a series on 2 Timothy. This is going to be our 175th series, and it's going to be very profitable. So, you want to start? What was what questions should we talk about here? You got a question for me? I pulled up my notes on your sermon here from a few weeks ago.
Well, remind me about the 1 Corinthians 15 message. You had the shake off the dust, and then you had something about the seed. Or
Right. So
was it?
there was the 3 points were to savor the seed.
Savor the seed.
So and this was the idea behind that was that our bodies, there's going to be a continuity. You're going to be recognizable. This body is going to be redeemed, right, as part of your resurrection body. Then you have to shake off the dust because you have to get off the old man, the dust from Adam, get that off and be made into the new image of Christ. And then when's that going to happen? You got to listen for the trumpet. And in the twinkling of an eye, you will be changed. You'll be transformed. Death will be defeated. So those were the 3 things from that, and we were applying that to the hope that even those with disabilities have in the future. And then all the way back with the Romans 8 and the groaning, you gave some interesting illustrations about the hospital. I think you used the hospital illustration. You had that. You talked about groaning and hope, and how do we reconcile those things? Romans 8:28, of course, is very famous. How would you summarize that message that was a few weeks ago?
I combined Romans 8 with 1 Corinthians 12 and said, the world is groaning. Disability is one of those ways in which we experience that groaning. And then 1 Corinthians 12 is how God actually gives us a resource, a solution through the groaning, and that's through the body. So kind of the catch line of that sermon was Romans 8 hope, 1 Corinthians 12 hands. And that's the way we want to be as a church. And I think there was some challenging parts of that. I think it's hard to see how God is going to bring things all together for the good. We have to trust that in faith. And then the other piece was that inclusion progression. And, I got this from Sarah, that we need to move our way along the trajectory towards full on, not just inclusion, but belonging. People really want a church where they feel like they belong.
That would have been a
good
chart slide to put up here if we thought about that.
Yeah, that was a good chart.
Yeah. Well, what if I ask you a question, then you ask me a question? We'll go back and forth on those 2 things.
Okay.
So my question for this is, where do you think groaning in our world is most acute?
I think particularly suffering of children is really hard for parents to understand. It's hard for the children to understand. It's hard to see that in first world countries. It's hard to see that in third world countries. I think we struggle to find a way to understand the sovereignty of God and the goodness of God when we see that kind of difficulty in the world. But yet, as we search the scriptures, we realize, God's got some wonderful examples in the Bible of people who have struggled in these areas. It's not a minor theme in the scriptures that people are experiencing physical maladies or disabilities or suffering, and God is teaching us through his word, here's my heart for people who are struggling. And I think one of the slides I showed on that sermon was, sometimes disabilities look like this, and it had like the wheelchair or the crutches but then sometimes disabilities are invisible, and we don't see how people are groaning, how they're suffering. So one of the things that we've discovered in the survey is that it's a lot more broad than perhaps we would have imagined. And I think people who are dealing with a disability or somebody in their family, they kind of feel like they're the only one, and nobody else really can relate or knows or cares. But then when you look at the statistics, there's no way that could be true, because it's all over the place. And so there's a challenge there where we can come alongside of each other and encourage each other and be there for each other as a church body. And I think that's where this series is taking us into the future.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you so much for those of you that filled out the first survey as well as the second one. So the second one was much more, how did this series change you? And then also, how can you be involved? How can we know what you need? And then if you want to serve, how can we get you plugged in? So we're going to be following up about that over the next month as our team meets. So expect to be contacted if you put some stuff in there. All right. How about you give me a question?
Okay.
All right.
So yours was about 1 Corinthians 15.
Yes.
And that's about the resurrection. So in the spirit of getting ready for Easter, what is the significance of the resurrection hope for somebody who's living with a disability today that doesn't look like it's going away? That doesn't look like there's treatment and they're not apart from a miracle, it doesn't look like that they're going to be getting better. Why is the resurrection in 1 Corinthians 15 something I want to hold on to, and how does that help me?
Yeah. Well, to use a Tolkien quote, one day everything sad will become untrue. I think that was Sam talking to Frodo. But I think the two things I wanted to emphasize in terms of the resurrection body here is that there is an element where you will be recognizable. You're not going to be somebody who... I asked the question, will I recognize my son in the new heavens and the new earth? And I think yes. But at the same time, you will be changed. You will be transformed. There will be healing. You will have a new body that is able to worship Jesus and function and be with them in heaven. And so when there's something in this world that's part of the curse of the fall, that will be wiped away. There will be no more tears or mourning or crying or pain. That will be gone. And you will be new and with Jesus and worshiping him as you were meant to be.
That's good. So if Jesus... can I ask another one? Do you want to go back and forth?
Give me well, if it's a germane follow-up question to that one, go ahead.
It's kind of a different subject.
Okay,
so,
then let me come back to my second question for you. How do we... So you talked about the Romans 8... heart, 1 Corinthians hands. How do we develop a heart for hope? How do we reconcile this groaning with this hope, which I guess is kind of similar to what you just asked me?
Mm-hmm. I think the tendency, the temptation in the Christian life is to baptize denial and act like it's hope. And it's skipping a few steps. So when we're suffering and when we have disability or when we encounter somebody who's suffering, the immediate knee-jerk reaction, flinch reaction to go to Romans 8:28 is too much too soon. I think there's a grieving process. Everybody goes through this at their own pace and speed. There's phases of, denial, anger, sadness, bargaining, all that stuff. And then finally we get toward acceptance and we understand how to, have our hope grounded in the scriptures. But I think a person with the compassion of Christ would recognize the gravity and the difficulty of having to deal with this on a regular basis in the real world right now. This is not going to be easy. And I think we should be careful about jumping right over from bad things happen. Oh, I'm going to skip grieving and I'm going to go right to like the resurrection or something like that. Right. So it's like, one of the issues that Paul was dealing with his letters is like some people say the resurrection has already happened. No, Paul's like, no, it gets better. This is not it. So it's okay to grieve. It's just not okay to grieve with no hope. And so I think at the end of our, encouragement is always to bring people back to remind them of the great hope that we have. So there's a balance.
Yeah,
but they're both there.
It's great. All right, now what's the question you're going to ask me?
Okay, if Jesus walked into our church with a disability, what do you think he would experience here at Millington? And what might he challenge us about? One of our elders Tuesday night wore a shirt to the meeting that said, if Paul were alive, we'd be getting a letter. So
who was that?
That was Jan.
It was Jan.
So if Jesus were to come and he had a disability and he came through the doors, what would he experience and what would he challenge us about? How do you think he would nudge us in the direction that he would have us go?
It's kind
of an abstract.
Did you come up with that yourself or something? That's a great question. Yeah, and then it's a worthy question to ask. If Jesus did walk in, because we talked a lot about. I forget if it was you. I think maybe you used this illustration. Will you, when you see somebody with a disability, do you lean in or do you lean, look away? And I think, and I'll just be honest, so obviously I have a son with disabilities, but before I learned a lot with that, I would have probably had the tendency to kind of look away, to not know what to say. And even on our initial survey that we took, that was one of the things that people voiced is, I'd like to do something, but I don't know how. How do I do this? How do I? I was speaking with a guy. I'm going to be going to a Johnny and Friends camp in July. I'm going to be the camp pastor for the week. They asked me to do that, and I'm partnering up with another pastor, and he was giving me the overview of how the week goes, and he was saying, I almost made, the first time I went, I almost made this mistake, because there was this I think, young lady in a wheelchair, and just by looking at her, I would have thought she had issues developmentally, and so I was going to lean down and talk with her like she was, much younger than she was. And the Spirit stopped him from doing that, because then she spoke and she was very articulate, and he said I would have looked very foolish. So there is a tendency to think, am I going to do something weird or wrong and offend somebody? But I think we have to kind of get over that and just make mistakes and try to minister as much as we can and treat people like they are, like. Minister to them like they were Jesus, like it was Jesus walking into our building. And so I was really impressed and hopeful by the positive response we got from the series of people wanting to lean in and not look away, even though that's some of the flesh we have to get over. Just the general positivity of people wanting to do that was very encouraging for me.
Very good.
All right. Next question for you. Okay, so you talked about two wrong attitudes. The first wrong attitude was in terms of getting involved with the church, and I think you were applying this to disability, but it's beyond that. The first wrong attitude is that the church doesn't need me, and the second wrong attitude is I don't need the church. Why do you think these wrong attitudes get into our hearts, and how can we overcome them?
Depending upon our background, culture, the kind of church we grew up in or didn't grow up in, the kind of affirmation we've received for our gifts in the past, the kind of experiences we've had at other churches in the past, the impressions that we might have of the people that are on stage, or the presuppositions we might have about who's supposed to do church and how does church work and how does church run. Well, there's a lot of things that come into play with how I decide about those questions. I think sometimes we tend to think about church in the 21st century as it's more of a consumer type of mentality. We're going to come in, we're going to get our needs met, and as long as you guys are doing what you promised, then I'll keep coming like I promised, and if not, the deal's off, right? But that's not really the New Testament model, and I think we need to understand if I'm here, I'm a vital part of the body, and I've got to find my place to serve, because the body actually is missing something if I'm not serving. People with disabilities, they might have the wrong thought that I'm not part of the body, or Jesus tells me in the scriptures that I'm a hand, but here I don't feel like I am a hand. I don't know how to be a hand, or they may not understand their exact role and how they could function, how they could bless and be a part of the body and serve. So they think, well, the body doesn't need me. The professionals got it, or I don't have anything to offer. So that's a misunderstanding that way. A lot of different reasons could be the cause of that. And then the other misunderstanding of I don't need the church, that's sort of the hyper-individualistic version of Christianity that we've sold to people for a long time, that salvation is an individual decision. Baptism is an individual thing you can do. We relieve the corporate aspect of Christianity, and we hop around different churches, and we don't understand that God is doing his best work in this world in the local church. And that's how we need to invest the majority of our energy and time and gifts in this world, that the church is what God is doing. So we should be a part of that. So, there's a hyper-individualism, I guess, that would cause that misunderstanding. I don't need you. I'm good. Got me and God and the beach and the Bible. And there's a bunch of country songs about this. Michaela's country playlist has a bunch of songs about Sunday service in the sand. You know that one, Tim?
I've heard a bunch like that.
Yeah. It's like, here's where I get church when I look up at the stars, that kind of thing. No.
I find God in a boat while I'm fishing out in a lake.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
all that stuff. Yeah. So I try to correct Michaela's theology on a regular basis when the country music, although it's quite catchy. The music is kind of fun, but bad theology, bad ecclesiology.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, how about maybe one more question for me?
Okay. We're done. The series is over, so we don't have to worry about this again, right? We've finished. We've already grown up, and we've learned this lesson, and we don't.
Right.
No. What do you hope that this is the beginning of here at Millington? What are you hoping this becomes the foundation upon which we build? What do you hope this series has accomplished, and how can we continue the momentum going forward, even though we're not going to continue hearing about this every Sunday morning anymore? So are you afraid that this is going to kind of die down? Are you afraid that this is going to lose some steam? And then how can we prevent that from happening? How can we continue the journey that we're on of becoming a church that values the upside down glory?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's always a concern that you put a lot of effort behind something and then you don't do the follow-up. And our hope is to make sure we do the follow-up. But I will also say, and I think I said this in the last sermon, I originally pitched this, I think, to our family ministries team and said, maybe we'll do a disability awareness Sunday. We'll do one sermon. And somebody said, and I think it should be a series. And so that's where we developed, we need to spend some time on this and really kind of cast vision and give some biblical teaching that people probably have never heard before. And so the idea of spending 7 to 8 weeks on this series was intentional. And it would be, it would be unfortunate if we did not continue this in a very meaningful way. Because part of it is, yes, we have programmatic ideas. We've thrown out some things about how do we make sure we're intentionally welcoming people. We threw out that idea of that 4-to-1 care ministry. We have things we're putting in place with our kids ministry, and our care ministry. All of that stuff is important and good. We need to do that. But there needs to be some level of cultural shift where we just say, oh, I need to recognize people that have needs and be okay with people that are different than me and not make them feel weird that they're here. They make weird noises or whatever it is. They look differently. And that's a principle that applies broadly and specifically for those with disabilities. And I do think if we do lean into this, God's going to do something very, very exciting here at Millington. I think he already is. So our disability leadership team is going to meet in a couple weeks. We're going to review our survey. We're going to start making recommendations. We're going to be doing more research. A few folks are going to the Disability in the Church conference next month. They're going to be bringing back learnings, and we're going to be slowly implementing stuff over the course of time here at the church. And it'll be start with low-hanging fruit. But then hopefully it'll build up to things like maybe even a Night to Shine outreach event. Tim and I have talked about that. That's not probably something tomorrow, but respite events are very important things for people that feel overwhelmed. So we kind of have a tiered plan. But my encouragement to everybody who's listening is just to start taking stock of your heart and noticing people that are around you. And we're going to leave up some of those taglines from the series out in the lobby. Disability ministry is not an individual burden; it's a corporate responsibility that we all have a part to play in this. Jesus sees the overlooked and calls and sends us to do the same. Those things. God sent the weak to shame the strong, and so we may be stronger than other people, but God uses us all, and we're all part of the body of Christ. I loved your theme in that Romans 8 message. May we have Romans 8 heart and 1 Corinthians 12 hands. May we live that out. And I do think that's going to be a very cool thing to watch. Would you add anything as a button hook?
Those were excellent. I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tim.
No, I thought the series was great. I was going to say you must have someone really smart on staff to recommend the sermon series. No, it was really cool seeing the feedback that you guys got, and just really cool sermon series. So thank you both.
All right. We didn't get to talk about Jason Thacker's Underground and Message, but on the Behind the Pulpit email that's going out on Wednesday, we're going to link to the full Underground. I encourage you to watch that, as well as we're linking a podcast that I did with him, I think a year and a half ago, on AI, because he's written a lot of stuff on that. So check out both those things. Those will be very beneficial to you. And this coming Sunday, we're starting a new sermon series. Dave's kicking it off. Why don't you give us a quick preview?
The last letter that Paul wrote was 2 Timothy. He wrote that in a dungeon. He wrote that as his final farewell to not only Timothy but to the church. And we're going to be studying this letter in the next few months because it's very much about passing the torch. It's about passing the mantle. It's about passing the baton. It's about how do we hand off the faith to the next generation? And here, as we're at this, I don't want to say moment, we're at this moment in the life of our church. It's 175 years
Civilizational moment.
We are. So how can we think about how can we be intergenerational in our thinking and make sure we're passing on our gospel legacy to the generation that's going to come after us? And we want to spend some time thinking very broadly about that. What are we doing to make sure that this outpost of the kingdom is best set up for the people that are coming that we don't know yet, the people that are going to be part of this church and leading this church that are not even maybe here yet. And so this is going to be a great series. It's going to challenge us to think about not only the legacy we leave as a church, but we'll also be thinking about personally where I'm investing my life and the kind of legacy that I'm leaving in my life. I think you'll be blessed by this. We're going to be kicking it off Sunday morning, and 2 Timothy is going to be a great study. So make sure you're here. Don't miss it. You won't want to miss out on the first week of the series.
That's great. All right, so we got a Theology Sprint question to cap us off today.
We do. Emphasis on sprint. So I've heard a term recently called the 3 pillars of philosophy. And I've never heard this before until today. So can any of you explain to me what that is?
Yeah, in philosophical study, if you were so inclined towards that, and I was talking with somebody about this on Sunday, there's 3 pillars. The first one is metaphysics, the second one is epistemology, and the third one is ethics. So I thought about this because Jason Thacker is an ethicist, and he was here this weekend, but metaphysics have to deal with the nature of the universe and reality. Epistemology has to deal with knowledge and how you know things, and then ethics has to do with right living and how you go about and live in the world. And so those things, I think, very much play together in developing a Christian worldview. How you know God and what the nature of the universe is and his creation, and then how you live rightly in the world. So if you want to dive more into philosophy, those are the 3 pillars. Check them out.
Incredible. That was our first ever
Unbelievable
philosophy sprint.
I remember Philosophy 101 class. There was a 4th category for our class that they said aesthetics was another.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah,
realm.
like beauty.
What is the beautiful?
Yeah,
the sunum bonum.
Yeah, I think John Frame gives those 3 in his History of Philosophy of the Western World. But I can see where aesthetics plays in there too. The good, the true, and the beautiful.
Far be it from me to disagree with John Frame.
John Frame, he's
a big fan of the show.
Yeah.
I'm sure he is.
Thank you guys for watching today.
We'll be back next week, and have a great week. It's going to be a warm one. Like the tropics are flowing in, the snow is melting, the water's going. We're getting ready
outside,
for Easter.
Get the vitamin D.
Narnia has come back.
Get a walk in.
All right, we'll see you next week.
How do we hang up this phone?